perhaps they learned from the European lesson, because, of course, the EU signed their trade deals, and there was a lot of head scratching back in Europe about whether that was the right thing to do. Canada seems to be saying, OK, if we can't get this deal, then so be it.
This evening, we're joined by Harriet Alexander, who is a US reporter based in New York. Harriet, good evening.
Hi, Kate.
We had a press conference, didn't we, from Caroline Levitt? Am I right in saying that they've been a little patchy and that we don't get one every day, and it's been a little while since we had, well, anything significant from one of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's felt like that in the past couple of days, for sure. I mean, to be fair, Donald Trump has been out of the country. He's been in Scotland, hasn't he, with his golf course, and and it's notably better than it was during his first term, when he had a press secretary who went her entire term as press secretary without holding a single one. So they don't come like clockwork as they did under the Biden administration, but it's a slight improvement on before.
And look, many will say Caroline Levitt is a bit of a superstar. She does a great job. She holds the line. She's, fierce, definitive. She's got an answer for everything, which is, of course, the work of every good press secretary. Let's reflect what she said today. She had a briefing a little bit earlier, about 6:00 UK time. She's announced that the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, he's been in Israel today, had good discussions with the Israeli Prime Minister. He's going to travel to Gaza tomorrow to inspect aid deliveries.
Tomorrow, Special Envoy Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee will be traveling into Gaza to inspect the current distribution sites and secure a plan to deliver more food and meet with local Gazans to hear firsthand about this dire situation on the ground. The Special Envoy and the Ambassador will brief the President immediately after their visit to approve a final plan for food and aid distribution into the region.
OK, so significant movement here. I mean, look, I think the international community will be interested to hear what Steve Witkoff has to say when he visits Gaza, when he inspects aid distribution sites. There will be perhaps a little bit of nervousness about the US's affiliation with Israel and actually whether we get the full picture or not. I mean, that has been an undercurrent of the war between Israel and Hamas throughout. What is America expecting tomorrow, do you think?
Well, I think it's really important to note from the off that this is a visit that is being organized by Israel and coordinated by Israel. You would hope that Steve Witkoff and Mike Huckabee would have some say in what they are doing, where they're going, who they're talking to. But, you can't count on that. And of course, Israel is insisting that there is no starvation in Gaza. The US team would like to go and see for themselves. But when they don't have freedom of movement around the territory, when they can't just go and chat to anybody because they're being chaperoned by the Israeli forces, it's difficult to see how that could happen. I mean, I think in general, it's good that they are there. It's good that they are talking to people, even if it's not necessarily a totally unvarnished opinion that they're getting, because they're certainly going to relay that to the White House and talk about the scenes that they have seen.
Yeah, certainly. We also heard that the United States has imposed sanctions on members of the Palestinian Authority. That is a Palestinian self-governance organisation. A separate Palestinian self-governance organisation, I think, if I'm to interpret this text correctly, and the Palestine Liberation Organisation. That's the PLO. So the origin of those sanctions, is that... I suppose when so many people are talking about recognising a Palestinian state, is that a line drawn by the United States to say, look, everything is not as rosy as it might be? There is no definitive succession here when you talk about how Gaza, Palestinian territory, might be governed. One of the possibilities is the Palestinian Authority, but this is an indication that they and many others don't have full faith.
Yes, I think that's very much what it is. I mean, I think, it was interesting that Caroline Levitt this afternoon was asked about, Donald Trump's position on the UK and France and now potentially Canada deciding that they would recognize Palestinian statehood in September. Donald Trump was asked about this, wasn't he, when he was in Scotland, and he was asked if he supported Keir Starmer doing it. And Trump said, I have no position on what the UK does.
Yeah.
And Caroline Levitt dramatically contradicted that. She said Donald Trump is adamantly opposed to it, which is not what he said. But I think Trump has probably come back to the White House and realized that it's in his interests to take a tough line on this. And I think the designation of those groups within the Palestinian Authority is emblematic of that, really.
Yeah, look, he was also lauded, President Trump, by Caroline Levitt for stopping, was it 6 wars since he's taken office? A war a month or something in the last 6 months. Anyway, let's hear what she had to say. Should be the result of stopping so many wars.
President Trump has brokered, on average, about one peace deal or ceasefire per month during his 6 months in office. It's well past time that President Trump was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
There we go. We know that that's something he wants. I mean, it's quite an extraordinary call to make by his press secretary at a press conference or at her nightly briefing, isn't it, this one, Harriet?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you were saying what a good job Caroline Levitt is doing. And I agree with you. I think she's pretty feisty and she controls that room and she does exactly what her boss wants her to do. There's sort of no messing with her. She's very much on brand. And so, yes, this is certainly appealing to Trump and we know that's what he wants. Sure, he has had some success in this. Absolutely. It's not to be sniffed at. But, the real thorny ones, Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Gaza, they, of course, are still yet to be resolved. And a lot of people would like to see that happen.
Let's talk tariffs, because, of course, it is the big deadline day tomorrow, isn't it, Harriet? August the 1st. Many nations have been given until tomorrow to negotiate a trade deal with Donald Trump. Do we know what the situation looks like as we speak?
Well, you certainly wouldn't want to be one of the Canadian trade envoys at the moment, because Mark Carney referenced on Wednesday this idea that Canada was also considering recognizing Palestinian statehood. And Trump was livid about that. And he said this means that trade deals could be off. The Canadians are quite sanguine, I think, about the whole thing. They're sort of, the mood music is certainly, we would rather not sign a bad deal. We will let these sanctions sort of clap back if need be, and then we'll keep on working to get something that works for us. I wonder if perhaps they learned from the European lesson, because of course the EU signed their trade deals, and there was a lot of head scratching back in Europe about whether that was the right thing to do. Canada seems to be saying, okay, if we can't get this deal, then so be it. We'll keep trying. Mexico is having a very different approach, as usual. Actually, the difference between Claudia Sheinbaum and Mark Carney is quite striking. She is much quieter in her approach, much less outspoken. And Mexico has just been granted this morning a 90-day pause on those tariffs that were due to come in on Friday. So, success for her once again. Mark Carney taking a different tack.
Yeah. I wonder how, I mean, was that deliberate, the move to give Mexico an extra 90 days, but to threaten to pull any negotiations with Canada? Is he deliberately playing the two off against each other, because they are, of course, two major trading partners with the United States, similar levels?
Yeah, he might be. He might be sort of trying to rub Mark Carney's nose in it, saying, this is what happens if you play nicely. It's working for Claudia Sheinbaum as well, because she has got really high approval ratings in Mexico. Mexicans certainly like the way that she is dealing with this. So she is very much referencing Mexico's sovereignty, saying that it is an independent nation that will not be pushed around by its giant neighbor to the north. But equally, she seems quite strategic and quite conciliatory. And, she's a leftist, but she has certainly managed to get Donald Trump on side, which is different to Mark Carney.
The EU deal, by the way, just in case our listeners would appreciate a reminder, 15% across the board, basically, on its exports to the United States. Head scratching, as you mentioned, because there are 0 tariffs on goods from America into the EU. And Trump also negotiated some extra EU investment in the United States. I think people were sort of saying who's actually won out of that situation. OK, it's not 25% tariffs, but the EU's had to concede quite a bit, many will argue. I will have to see where all the other nations are. Do we have a definitive or a clear picture, Harriet, on sort of how many nations are still to strike trade deals with the United States? Do you think we're going to get to tomorrow and Donald Trump will once again sort of roll out an extension?
I mean, you've got to really feel for some of these countries, haven't you? Everyone is scrambling to get the attention of the ambassadors and the trade negotiators, but it's unclear how far those talks are along. I mean, you've got to really feel for the trade negotiators for India, which faces a 25% tariff come Friday, and Brazil, which would be 50%. Trump is quite, adversarial towards Brazil at the moment. Their leftist leader, Lula, has not done much to get into Trump's good books, and Trump is currently trying to sanction the person who is prosecuting Lula's right-wing predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro. So things are pretty bad between Brazil and the United States, and they face 50% tariffs, which is going to have a huge impact on their economy.
Yeah, and India has felt Donald Trump's wrath in the last few days because the president points out that they've been dealing with Russia. They've been, striking or purchasing military equipment from Russia and oil and gas too. And so Donald Trump has indicated that India will face a penalty for dealing with Russia, something that he promised he would do as part of sort of turning the screw on Russia further over failure to reach a ceasefire over Ukraine. Thanks for being with us, Harriet. Always great to speak to you. That is Harriet Alexander, who is a US-based reporter.